go in contention for a game of the year, because that game would be a must-watch for us this next season. Welcome to NBA Now, everybody. So, to quickly start off this episode, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for the support on the channel so far. It means a lot. But with all that mushy shit out of the way, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to be talking about Ben Simmons, right? So, obviously, Ben Simmons has been in the news a lot this offseason. Constant trade rumors, and we know that now he's probably not going back to the Sixers team. It would really require, either he sits out this season and loses money if they decide they're going to call his bluff, or in the next week or two we're going to hear of a Ben Simmons trade that most likely the Sixers will lose. Now here's, I think, probably their best trade offer that they can try and accomplish on the table right now, and so that's what this video is probably going to be about, and it's the Minnesota Timberwolves. So before we get to the Timberwolves side of things, let's talk about the offers or what Philly wanted for Simmons going into the offseason. So we know that initially it was, we're not going to trade Ben Simmons. Then it ramped up to, we're going to trade him. And then it was we want a James Harden level package. Now, I think we all kind of realized you're not getting a James Harden level package, especially for a guy that underperformed in the playoffs. And although has been an all-star almost every year that he's been in the league and is a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year last year, his value tanked a lot after that playoff run that we all witnessed. So I don't think coming out of that you can expect to get that much of a return. Obviously, guys' value fluctuates throughout the year, and I don't think Simmons is as bad as his value could be right now to most teams. But that's just the unlucky draw of the straw, right? That's just what you got out of waiting this long to decide on Simmons or Embiid. And so that's what they were looking for. So, I mean, if a Damian Lillard type of trade somehow makes itself able to happen, that's probably their best option. Behind that, it'd probably be a Bradley Beal. And then I guess if you could maybe get a CJ McCollum. But I don't even think any of those offers are on the table or are going to happen. Because unless Dame or Bradley Beal request out, they're not getting traded. And I don't think Dame wants to move off of his second guy, and CJ is really the only guy he's had since he was drafted. I mean, he had like LaMarcus Aldridge for a little bit, I think, before he went to the Spurs, but for the most part, every run that he's been on, it's been him and CJ, kind of like Steph and Clay, him and CJ, that type of dynamic where it's those two are the guys, right? And so I don't think he's going to want them to move off CJ, because although I think he wants to win, I don't think he wants to ditch, that's why he's not going to leave Portland. And I don't think he wants to ditch the guys that he's working to try and win with, right? So I just think that's Dame's mentality. So I don't see CJ even coming available unless Dame were to get traded. And at that point, you would try and target Damian Lillard. So with them off the table, that has limited a lot of the options to the Kings, the Raptors, the Timberwolves, and stuff like that. Maybe not where Simmons wants to end up, right? We know we listed some places, but a guy that is under contract until 2024 and is going to be making $30+ million a year, I don't think he has much leverage under that matter. I mean, if you're going to sit out, you're going to lose money. So, and you're locked up long enough that's a lot of money to lose. So, if he were to sit out, he could lose, $100+ million if he decides not to play for either the Sixers or the team that he gets traded to. So, really, the ball, although he's trying to make it in his park and he's trying to really get all that leverage, it's not really much in his park. In fact, it's not in the Sixers' park either. It's in the other team's ballpark. Because, although last year he averaged 14 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists, like we were talking about, in the playoffs, it dipped. Let me get those exact numbers for you. So, yeah, in the playoffs, he didn't even average 12 points. He did all right on the defensive end with almost 1.5 steals and almost a block per game. He had almost 9 assists and almost 8 rebounds. But, again, those free throws, 34% from free throw, little above 60% from just 2-pointers, and then obviously he made no 3-pointers. So like that's not 0% from 3 does not help your team, especially in the playoffs. Now if you build around him in like a Giannis type of way, this guy is a guy that has limitless potential, but he's not built around that way, and that's not the way it's looked at, and that's not the way that his value has landed at this point. So I mean, the highest that he's ever shot from 3 was this year with 30%. So if you want to take that for what it is, I guess. And that's only on 0.1 3-pointers made a game, I think. So pretty much non-existent, right? We know what his shot is. We know he does the gym shots every offseason, but it doesn't evolve into anything. So do I think he could work with the Timberwolves? So let's really get into the bread and butter of it. So I think that a trade to get him to the Timberwolves is most likely going to involve D'Angelo Russell, which you have to see how that's going to work with Karl-Anthony Towns. But if it is okay, D'Angelo Russell and Simmons are both friends with Towns, so if it was a way where he's okay getting Simmons and the only way to get him is to move off D'Angelo Russell and he wants to try that, okay. If not, I still think the Timberwolves can be a competent team and push for a playoff seed without Simmons if they're healthy. That's the key thing. Because you look at like Cat and D'Lo, they have only played very little healthy games together. It's kind of like the Trailblazers situation when they had Odin, Roy, and I can't even remember because Dame wasn't on that team at that point, but they had somebody else. And they weren't... they only played like 60 games together, and they were like 50 wins and like 10 losses or something like that. And that's how good this Timberwolves team has played when they're playing together. But because they're so in and out of lineups, I think they could push for a playoff seed, especially if they're healthy, without Simmons, but it's, do you want to bank on them being healthy? So if the trade does involve D'Angelo Russell, I think the trade looks like this. I think it's D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, a 2022 first-round pick unprotected, and a 2024 first-round pick unprotected for Ben Simmons. Now, this is kind of a rough sketch for it, but you're going to have to, I think, at least give up 2 guys that can go out there and do something. I don't think, Daryl Morey, he's an experienced GM in this league. He handled the Rockets and built one of the best teams probably to not win or to not even make the finals in that Rockets team with Chris Paul and James Harden when they lost to the Warriors because of their own lack of being able to just make shots in those final couple games, and then Chris Paul's injury and Iguodala's injury, whatever, right? But this is an experienced GM that knows what he wants and is going to try and get that to his best of ability, and he's not going to get scammed if he can. But he's not going to get all the value out of Simmons that he most likely would be able to. So I think this is the best trade offer as the Sixers that you're looking at getting, is a D'Angelo Russell, who's a one-time All-Star, and I think would fit pretty decent with Cat and their roster. And then Malik Beasley, I would actually run him off the bench as a 6-man type of player for this team. I'd keep Seth Curry in that starting lineup, because although Beasley, I think, is a pretty good shot maker and he can make the shots like that, I don't know if I want to take Seth Curry. I think he's just too valuable, having that super elite shooter next to Embiid. We saw what he did with JJ Redick, and we saw what he did with Seth Curry this last year, so I would not take him out of the starting lineup. But Malik Beasley off the bench as that primary scorer would be pretty good for them, especially if they end up tying him with next to Tyrese Maxey. That would be a super good bench scoring combo. Maybe they trade off Tyrese Maxey to get more of a small forward for the starting lineup. But that's kind of what I'm thinking for that initial trade, for your best value that you can get as the Sixers. Now, what I think is probably more of a realistic trade to happen, which really shows to you how much Simmons' value has dropped, is probably Malik Beasley and potentially 2 unprotected first-round picks and a protected first-round pick, or 3 unprotected first-round picks and a protected pick, or some sort of combination like that. Now, those picks would probably be 2022, 2024, 2026, and 2028 if it's 4, and you can probably take off the 28 if it's just 3, right? Now, Malik Beasley, he would probably slide into that starting role next to Seth Curry, who would probably end up being your starting point guard at that point. So that gives you not the best playmaking backcourt, but a pretty decent shooting and scoring backcourt. But it doesn't get... Malik Beasley, he's almost a 20-point per game scorer, right? He's kind of a logjam on the Timberwolves. We know he had the off-the-court issues, so how much his value really is, I don't know. But this is probably somewhat more of a realistic value, which I think if you have to settle for this, you probably don't trade him to the Timberwolves. But if the 76ers can go and get D'Angelo Russell and Malik Beasley, that sits well decently for them. And if you look at the Timberwolves roster resulting from this trade, most likely, you know, Simmons is playing some sort of combination of point forward, right? So we'll call him the point guard. But if I have a smaller forward in the starting lineup, you kind of understand that Simmons might be guarding the forwards while playing the point guard position, right? But you're looking at Ben Simmons at the 1. You're looking at Anthony Edwards at the 2. You're looking at either Josh Okogie or Taurean Prince at the 3, and then Jaden McDaniels at the 4, and Karl-Anthony Towns at the 5. So that is a pretty good shooting lineup. Only hole obviously being Simmons. We know Cat is one of, if not the best, you know, star three-point shooter big man. I think him, Embiid, and Jokic all can shoot the ball pretty well, but I would say out of the 3, I'm going to give that edge to Cat. He's pretty damn elite from out there. And I think maybe mixing up the roster, we know we went through a lot in the bubble. He's lost a lot of family members due to COVID. So, you know, prayers up to Cat. But I think, you know, maybe just a shift in the roster. We know that they tried to make some moves, and they just haven't been healthy to make it work. So maybe just one more shift in the roster, have a new friend on the team, you know, some sort of thing like that. Lean maybe more into a defensive type of thing, because you, not only did I say that starting lineup can shoot around Simmons, which is your number one thing that you need with Ben Simmons, but that starting lineup can defend. Whether you have Taurean Prince or Josh Okogie in there, Taurean Prince is going to be a little bit bigger, Josh Okogie a little bit smaller for maybe some guard defense. Those guys are pretty good defenders, and they're probably your worst players in the starting lineup, right? I think Jaden McDaniels, super athletic guy. He's probably going to have a good sophomore year jump, and I'm excited to see what he can do this next season, especially at the 4 as, you know, a little bit of a smaller 4 that's more switchable next to Cat, right? Cat he's gotten better defensively. I'd say he's probably on par, maybe a little bit worse than Jokic at this point. They're not the black holes at that center position that they were a few years ago, so they've gotten better on defense. And then Anthony Edwards, obviously we know he's got the athletic tools to be a super strong defender, and as he would slide kind of back into that true like third option, maybe it would be between him and Simmons for that second option for scoring the ball. But I think Simmons is probably gonna have the ball in his hand a little bit more, just because he's got that playmaking ability. So he'd probably slide into that true third option and be able to really lean into that defensive capability that he has. And so Simmons, and whoever the third is, whether it be Prince, Okogie, or even McDaniels at the 3, next to on that perimeter, would be pretty phenomenal as a perimeter defensive unit. And then you have whoever you're going to play at the 4 is probably going to be pretty switchable, a decent defensive guy coming off the bench. And I cannot remember if Patrick Beverley stayed on this team, so we're just going to leave him out of the equation. But if he is on the team, he'd be pretty solid for them off the bench as well. But I cannot remember if they bought him out or not. So we're just going to leave a little bit of a nitbit. If he's on the team, that's good for them. If not, it's whatever. But yeah, so you're looking at the Timberwolves. You know, if you give up those 2 picks, you're going to have Simmons and Cat locked up for all 3 of the years that those picks are being included, and then Simmons for an extra year. And then you have Anthony Edwards locked up for that whole time period. So you could, especially, you know, you're going to have Taurean Prince money off the books this next year. So you might really be able to at least mold a push for the playoffs this season, and maybe make it next season, or make the playoffs this season with that almost big 3, because you're looking at 3 number 1 overall picks all on the same team that are going to, I think, work well together. I mean, you've got the defensive capability, you've got the scoring capability, you've got the shooting. So I think this trade for the Timberwolves looks super great on paper. Is Ben Simmons going to lean into playing in Minnesota? We know that he kind of wants to go to a warm weather area. We know he's from Australia, where I think it's pretty warm down there. I'm like 95% sure, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, he wants to lean into that warm weather area. And so if he can lean into really playing here and having fun, and if they can just have fun as a basketball team and really work it out, that would be super cool. Plus, it would create kind of a cool dynamic. We know Karl-Anthony Towns and Embiid kind of have that rivalry, and there have been reports that Simmons and Embiid haven't got along as well as of recently. So a Timberwolves versus Sixers matchup whenever Simmons returns to Philly to play them would probably go in contention for a game of the year, because that game would be a must watch for us this next season, and that would be super awesome. And we got to see Cat succeed at some point. The guy, we're starting to get to, like, I mean, Damian Lillard's been with this team longer, but like, Cat is starting to become one of those guys that you just want to see win. You know what I mean? You've seen him go through so much that you just want to see the guy win, and I think bringing Simmons on his team could really super help them. And then if you are thinking about playing Simmons with the 4 in this type of a lineup, maybe you go out and you can try and get another guard. Obviously, at that point, it would have been nice to keep Ricky Rubio, but what are you going to do? You also have Jalen Noel off the bench, who is a pretty underrated shout to do something for him next year if this trade does go through, because he would have some more minutes even open up to him as well. And then, yeah, so I think if the Sixers can get Ben Simmons for this trade package over to the Timberwolves, it would be super smart for them to do. I could still see both teams making the playoffs off of this trade, and I think it's probably going to be the best value that the Sixers can get, and the Timberwolves probably best plan moving forward right now, because that's going to be your highest talent level player that you can really get. We know the Timberwolves are not a free agency destination, so although they've got Taurean Prince's money coming off the books this next offseason and stuff like that, you're not going to go sign anybody big. But if you can just maybe get a role player this next offseason also to throw into that, or just bring back Taurean Prince if he has a decent year, I think this is a team that could be good enough to make the playoffs, and I'd be super excited to see how this would go out. So if you guys enjoyed, make sure you guys drop a like, subscribe for more, and this has been NBA Now. Catch y'all next time.